First of all, let me say what an honor it is to be here with you. And I guess maybe it's kind of a fluke thing because my nickname is Fluke, as you know, W.S. Fluke Holland. The weird thing about all of it, now that it's history, I look back at it, I never thought a lot about it while it was happening. But it was 1954. I was just out of high school at Bemis, Tennessee, a little town south of Jackson here, J.B. Young High. I'd been out of school about a year, and I was working with an air conditioning company. Air conditioning was just beginning to happen, so I said, man, that's what I'll do the rest of my life. And I never thought about being in the music business at all. It never crossed my mind. I was more mechanically minded because that's one of the things I did with Lawrence Coal Company is work on their old trucks. And the weird thing about it all, or weird or whatever, is Carl Perkins and the Perkins family, his two brothers in the family, lived in the same little town that I did, Bemis, Tennessee. And I met them. One way I met them, I met Clayton first, his younger brother. There was a kind of a little restaurant over in the part of town where they lived, and I'd stopped by there some and met them. And it was Carl and his two brothers, and they had a little band. They was playing around over the place. And I look back at it now, I don't really know why I started going, but I'd met them, and we liked each other, I think, and I would go to some of the clubs they were playing. But for some reason, I still don't know why, on some of the up-tempo songs they were playing. Carl, they did mostly Hank Williams songs back then. For some reason, I would walk out beside Clayton, the bass player, beside the upright bass, and just keep time on the side of the bass. Like, for example, Hank Williams, "Hey, good looking" on a "Hey, hey, good looking, what you got cooking?" I would do that. One night, I was still around when they got through, and we was down a club called a Hilltop Inn down south of Jackson. And Carl, just out of the clear blue sky, he said, "W.S., we got an appointment to meet Sam Phillips next Thursday. Borrow some drums and go with us." And I said, "Borrow some drums?" Man, what would I do if I had a drum? I can't play drums. He said, "You keep time on that bass like that, you could play drums." Now, this was on a Saturday night. Again, I'll say for some reason a dozen times probably because it's all a mystery to me. But I found a guy here that had some drums. I'd heard a boy worked at an amusement company, and I found him, and his name was Slick Glisson. I said, "Slick, I want to borrow your drums Thursday." And I told him why. And he said, "Well, W.S., you can't play." I said, "Well, but if you'll let me borrow your drums, I'll be playing by Thursday." He let me have them. I went out to my mom's house, set them down. Now, I never had seen a drum set up before. So I set the hi-hat over on the right side. If you'll notice, every drummer you'll see, the hi-hat will be over here on the left side, and like a snare drum here, and he's playing like this. You know, this hand his left hand is blocked if he wants to do it. But I didn't know that I was setting them up backwards. So I did. Fooled around for a while. Thursday, we got in my car, drove over to Memphis, unloaded, set up in the middle of the floor over there like you still do. Started singing a song that Carl had wrote about Movie Mag was the name of it. And I think about it now, a song like that to get a record deal. It was about a boy taking his girlfriend named Maggie to the movie on a horse named Becky. He'd climb up on old Becky's back and just ride to the picture show. But Sam Phillips liked what he heard that day, and we got a recording contract. On the way back, we was kidding about it. Man, anybody never played before, played on a record and got a recording contract. We went back later in late 55, I think, and recorded Blue Suede Shoes, which was our third release. And during all of 55, we started touring because what happened back then, you could go into Sun Studio make a record, take it up to Dewey Phillips' Red Hot and Blue radio show, and he'd play it a couple of times. Man, you could play the National Guard Armory anywhere in 75-mile radius of Memphis and fill it up on Saturday night. But in 55, here's when the rest of the Sun group came. In the middle of 54, Elvis, Scotty, and Bill played. At the end of 54, Carl and his Rude Brothers and I. Then in 55, here come Johnny Cash, Roy Orbison, Billy Riley. A big group of Sun people started. And Sam and Bob Neal, a disc jockey, started a booking agent called Stars Incorporated, booking the Sun artists. So that's where we all played together, starting in 1955. Fact of business, if you look over here on this poster, there's a poster over there of John and Elvis and Carl in 1956 playing a show in Amory, Mississippi at the National Guard Armory, and the tickets is $1.25. So when I look at that, I tell people, I said, now I know why there wasn't any money for the drummer. In 1956, we was back in the studio to record the release after Blue Suede Shoes. And it was a Matchbox. Now, Carl, his two brothers and I, and Sam had hired Jerry Lee Lewis to play piano. He was a piano player hanging around, and he hired him to play piano. And in the middle of the session, John and Elvis just dropped by. They heard we were in town, and we'd met each other the year before and played quite a few shows together, and they just dropped by to say hello. Nobody thought anything about it that night. Of course, when they dropped by, it just stopped, and it turned into a jam session. Elvis sat down on the piano and just started singing some things. Like it happened a lot of times later in the 60s and 70s at the studio in Nashville, Columbia. That's what happened. People dropped by, but that one became really famous later after it became history. But kind of made Jerry Lee a little bit mad. Elvis told him to get up. Let me show you a few hot licks on the piano. But nobody thought anything about it that night. There's two things that happened if it hadn't happened, we wouldn't be talking about it. Jack Clement was the engineer. He didn't think anything about it. When the jam session started, he just turned the machines on, went next door to the Taylor Cafe to get him a sandwich, and just let it run. And really the quality of anything is not all that good. I didn't know, or nobody else knew what they was going to do next. But that happened, and Sam did think to call a photographer and made the famous picture you see of the boys. And I kind of fussed at Sam later when it became really a big deal and important history. I said, Sam, man, if you'd have been smart as people thought you were long about then, you'd have had that photographer to pan over about 3 feet. I would have been it, then it would have been famous. And it didn't make him mad. but what happened to it later? Of course, later when the boys did become big stars, people ask me now, like, man, what did it feel like to you to be in the studio with all those big stars? And a lot of people don't understand. And I tell them, I say, hey, I wasn't in the studio with any big stars. The only thing I had on my mind that night was Sam had started having to keep time and pay union scale. And union scale that night was $11. So I was just concerned about my $11.